In 1807, after his marriage and the publication of household furniture, Thomas Hope purchased a country estate known as the Deepdene in Surrey, about 24 miles southwest of London. The centerpiece of this substantial estate overlooking a bucolic valley was a classical mansion of red brick built in the early 1770s. Unlike his London home on Duchess Street, Hope did not immediately alter and change the Deepdene. The eclectic and asymmetrical additions that Hope made to the Deepdene resulted in a massive building in the picturesque style. English leaders in design and architecture of the period, such as Hope, considered the picturesque one of the most appropriate styles for country homes. The picturesque emphasized variation and eclecticism, as well as integration within the landscape, all of which were well expressed at the Deepdene. Hope's picturesque improvements to his country estate were not limited to the mansion itself. The visitor to the Deepdene first encountered an entrance lodge on the main road in the Tuscan vernacular style, and then, while traveling along the private drive, passed under a Gothic archway with the arms of Hope and Beresford, his wife's family, carved on each side. On reaching the mansion, visitors were greeted by the extensive entrance wing that Hope added to the southwest of the original house. It was largely derived in style from classical sources. Perhaps the most striking feature of this new front to the house was the Italianate Belvedere tower that Hope built over the new staircase linking the body of the old house to his new, large dining room. In 1823, Hope added a wing at a 45-degree angle to the body of the house on its southwest end. This section of the house was even more eclectic and varied than Hope's previous additions, and included architectural features derived from ancient Greece and Rome, as well as later Italian and Gothic styles. This section of the house contained the conservatory, statue gallery, and the Theatre of the Arts. The space Hope called the Theatre of the Arts was laid out in the stepped form of an ancient Roman theatre and featured part of Hope's collection of antique sculpture in place of a human audience. Hope moved most of his sculpture collection to the Deepdene in 1824, including the unusual basket-shaped cinerarium seen in the Theatre of the Arts, which Hope had previously showcased in the picture gallery at Duchess Street. As can be seen in this watercolor, the Theatre of the Arts was linked to the conservatory, visible through the open doors. Connecting the Theatre of the Arts with the rest of the house, the conservatory was filled with the sights and smells of exotic plants and murmuring water. This view looks out towards the American aloe plant that was centered in front of the conservatory's exterior doors with the space's fountain in the foreground. The conservatory terminated in a domed apse that linked the space with the main part of the house. Here, Hope gave Bertel Thorvaldsen's Psyche an important place in a central niche. The sculpture complemented the idea that Hope's new wing, with spaces devoted to nature and art, was a place for reflection and contemplation. The other major space that Hope added in this section of the Deepdene was the statue gallery. Like the statue gallery at the Duchess Street house, this room was also long and narrow and was top-lit through a clerestory. However, Hope was freer in his arrangements at the Deepdene by displaying both ancient and modern works in the same space. Hope intended to evoke themes of love, nature, and family through the arrangement of artworks in this gallery. In the apse end of the statue gallery, Hope placed his Paposilenus seated on a rock. This late 2nd century AD sculpture featured a minor woodland deity who was the foster father and faithful companion of Dionysus, Greek god of nature and wine. In the left foreground, we see Hope's fine example of Aphrodite, or Venus. He likely purchased it in Naples in 1802 or 1803. Dating from the 1st or 2nd century AD, this Roman sculpture was restored and given a new head in the late 18th century. Hope also included a modern sculpture of Venus in the statue gallery at the Deepdene. In 1820, Hope received the Venus by famed neoclassical sculptor Antonio Canova and proudly displayed it at his Duchess Street residence. Hope was so enamored of this sculpture by the noted artist that he ordered a copy of it made to display at the Deepdene. It would be quite difficult to recreate most of the interiors of the Deepdene since their appearance was largely unrecorded. This is one of the few images documenting those interior details. It shows the chimneypiece in the old library. Hope was presumably quite proud of this statuary marble mantel, as evidenced by a whole watercolor being devoted to it. This room, known as the boudoir, adheres to the French Empire style promoted by Charles Percier and Pierre Fontaine more closely than Hope's designs for his Duchess Street interiors. The daybed and canopy are particularly reminiscent of Percier and Fontaine. This illustration highlights how important rich colors were in Regency interiors. Hope owned several examples of the type of table seen in the boudoir. In household furniture, he described it as a, quote, monopodium, or table in mahogany inlaid with ebony and silver. Thomas Hope's Deepdene did not survive long after his death in 1831. His son, Henry Thomas Hope, followed in his father's footsteps and took on an elaborate redecoration of the mansion. Between 1836 and 1841, he removed most of his father's additions and remodeled the house into an Italian Renaissance villa seen here. In 1917, the contents of the house were auctioned, and then the mansion itself was sold in 1920. Sadly, the Deepdene was demolished in 1969.